Hello. In this lesson, I'm going to show you how to start your talk for IELTS Speaking Part 2. Now, there's not really a wrong way or a right way to start your talk, okay? It is only in the sections of IELTS Speaking and IELTS Writing that you are given a slight creative freedom to express your opinions and to use all the knowledge that you have of the language. Now, while there is no incorrect or correct manner to be precise, I want to show you what is a good way to start. So the topic we have at hand today to discuss this further is describe a book you recently read. So if you're faced with a question like this, how do you start your talk? Okay, so a good way to start is you can say, I'd like to tell you about, or I'm going to tell you about. Now focus. In both these sentences, while they seem completely basic and simple to you, I have used a contraction, both when I said I'd and when I said I'm. Now, when you are going in for your speaking test, try and use contractions of words. Like, we contracted I would like to tell you about into I'd. And I am going to tell you about I'm. Now, why we do not use I would and I am and instead contract it into I'd and I'm is to help you get a better band score for your pronunciation. Just as we told earlier that when you go in for your speaking lesson, always introduce yourself and say my name's so and so instead of saying my name is so and so. So, whenever you use a contraction, it is better both for your pronunciation and your grammar skills. So, it is a great way to start off your talk. Now, let us try and understand how to continue this. Okay, so this was just the first segment of how you should begin your talk when you're asked a question like this. So, remember that the question we are talking about was describe a book that you recently read. Now, what most students do is they copy paste the same question after saying these beginning sentences and the beginning words, So now if you want to land in a band score 6, 7 or higher, you need to show the examiner that you could say the same thing but using your own language. Yes, exactly. You need to paraphrase even when you speak. So how can we do that really? So one way to paraphrase this information would be saying, I'm going to tell you about a novel which I read 2 weeks ago. Okay, so by saying a novel, we paraphrase the word book, and in the question it was asked that you have to describe a book that you recently read. So to replace recently, we gave the examiner a more specific time frame that we read the novel 2 weeks ago. So again, we paraphrased the question beautifully and gave some beautiful grammar and pronunciation. We projected some beautiful grammar and pronunciation along with using our own vocabulary, our own language. So this shows the examiner that you are flexible enough when it comes to using language. So while this was a really nice way to start our talk, we can always improve it. Now, let's try and look at another way that we can add on to this existing statement and make it so much better. So one thing that you can do is add more detail to the existing sentence that we already discussed. Now that was a great way to start off, but let's try and look at some tips about how we could score well and better even with using that sentence. So what detail do we really add? So if you remember, I said that we could start off by saying, I'm going to tell you about a novel I read 2 weeks ago. Now you could describe a little bit about the kind of novel. Now I do not want you to go in depth in the very first sentence, obviously, but you could add in interesting adjectives like, I'm going to tell you about a fascinating novel that I read not so long ago. So fascinating really means really interesting. You could use other adjectives for the novel that you read, such as it was a very useful novel. So you could say that I'd like to talk about a useful novel that I just read not too long ago. Or you could say exciting novel is another thing is another way in which you could describe the novel. Now, if you remember, I paraphrased the next part of the sentence also, which was when I said that I read a novel 2 weeks ago. This time, to make it a little more interesting, I said a fascinating novel which I read not so long ago. So you see, this is excellent. And why is that? Because not so long is a direct paraphrase for recently. Yes, did you catch that trick? It is really going to help you. So keep that in mind. So not only was this a direct paraphrase of the word recently, which was given to us in the question, but what this will do is, if in the beginning sentence you give a paraphrase like not so long ago for recently, during the talk you could give the precise time period, for instance 2 weeks or 1 week ago, a month ago, or whenever. So this is a really good way to develop your talk and to also lengthen your talk a bit. So it will really enhance the content of your talk. So I hope you were able to understand a good way to start your talk. This was just an example. I hope with this you are able to tackle many more questions, and with these tips you try and practice by paraphrasing your questions in a much better manner. Alright, this is it for this lesson. We'll be back with more videos.